Sometimes death comes in the most unexpected ways, caused not by danger or disaster, but by a single bad decision. In this video, we'll look at 5 real stories of people who lost their lives in ways that were completely avoidable. These aren't just freak accidents. They're tragic reminders of how simple choices, made in the wrong moment, can turn suddenly and shockingly deadly. It was the night of August 26, 2012, in Kalispell, Montana. That Sunday evening, 44-year-old Randy Lee Tenley, known to his friends simply as Tater, made a decision so strange and so unthinkable. Randy loved the outdoors. Born in West Virginia, he had lived most of his life in Montana and was deeply rooted in the community. He had a son, a large extended family, and plenty of friends. But he also had a mischievous streak, a love for practical jokes and bizarre ideas. And on this night, that love would cost him everything. As the sky darkened over Highway 93, just south of Rocky Cliff Road, Randy stepped out of the trees wearing a full-body ghillie suit, a camouflage outfit used by military snipers to disappear into nature. His goal? To fake a Bigfoot sighting? Not for fame, not for money, just for laughs. He wanted someone driving by to catch a glimpse of him, panic, and later report a sighting of the legendary creature. But Randy never considered how invisible the suit would make him on a rural highway at night. At around 10:30 p.m., a 15-year-old girl from the nearby town of Summers was driving along that stretch of road. She didn't even see him. One second, her headlights swept across the pavement, and the next, they hit something. Someone. She had struck Randy, knocking him to the ground. Stunned and in shock, she barely had time to react before another vehicle came barreling down the same lane. A 17-year-old girl, also from Summers, ran over Randy as he lay motionless on the asphalt. By the time emergency services arrived, Randy was dead. His injuries were catastrophic. There was nothing anyone could do. One of the teenage passengers suffered minor injuries, but the real trauma was psychological. 2 young drivers, still kids, had just been part of a fatal accident they never could have avoided. Police launched an investigation, trying to make sense of the chaos. Montana Highway Patrol Trooper Jim Schneider spoke to Randy's friends, who admitted what he was trying to do. It was a Bigfoot prank. Nothing malicious, just a stunt. But the trooper was baffled. "You can't make it up," he said. "I haven't seen or heard of anything like this before." No one had. That night, there were no 911 calls about a mysterious creature lurking near the road. The only calls were from the crash site. The reality was far stranger. Authorities suspected alcohol might have played a role, but toxicology results were pending. News of the bizarre incident spread fast. It wasn't long before national outlets were reporting on the strange story of a man dressed as Bigfoot who died during his own hoax. But behind the headlines was a deeper sadness. A man who'd lived a full life, who had a family, friends, and a history in the town, reduced to a punchline because of one bad decision. Randy was born on December 10, 1967, and graduated from Flathead High School in 1985. He worked at Plum Creek for over a decade and later at a local moving company. He left behind a son, Hunter, as well as his mother, stepfather, siblings, and countless others who cared for him. His father had passed away years earlier. A private burial and public memorial were held on September 1st at Flathead Christian Center, where friends and family gathered to remember him. It was May 21, 2004 in Lake Jackson, Texas, a quiet town where life rarely made headlines. But that morning, everything changed. Inside his home, 58-year-old Michael Warner, a seemingly reserved machine shop owner, was found dead. To neighbors, he was quiet and hardworking. But behind that silence was a hidden struggle, one that ended in one of the most bizarre deaths the town had ever seen. Michael had battled alcohol addiction for years, but due to ulcers and severe acid reflux, drinking was excruciating. Doctors warned him it could be deadly. Still, the addiction didn't let go. So he found another way, one few would ever imagine. Instead of drinking, Michael began administering alcohol rectally. It bypassed the liver's filtering system, entering his bloodstream quickly and powerfully. From childhood, he was familiar with enemas. His mother used them regularly on him. As an adult, he experimented. Coffee, soap, and eventually, alcohol. On the night of May 20th, Michael used 2 1.5-liter bottles of cherry sherry, over 100 fluid ounces, through an enema. He passed out during the night, but the alcohol kept entering his system. By morning, he was dead. Toxicology tests showed his blood alcohol content was 0.47%, nearly 6 times the legal driving limit. Detective Lieutenant Robert Turner called it a level that typically ends in the hospital or the morgue. But the tragedy didn't stop with Michael's death. His wife, Tammy Jean Warner, was arrested and charged with criminally negligent homicide. Investigators believed she had helped administer the fatal enema, knowing how dangerous it was. Tammy insisted otherwise. She said Michael always handled the process himself, that he was in full control. She denied having any role, and also denied destroying his will, another allegation that deepened suspicions. Released on $30,000 bond, Tammy faced trial in July. The case sparked national attention, not just for its shocking nature, but for the disturbing questions it raised. Was this a tragic accident, or something darker? Medical experts weighed in. Rectal alcohol use, they said, is dangerously real. There's no gag reflex, no nausea, just pure unchecked absorption. A single mistake can be fatal. 3 years later, Michael was posthumously awarded a Darwin Award, a satirical recognition for fatal lapses in judgment. Online, some laughed, others were horrified. But beneath the ridicule was a man battling addiction in silence. Michael Warner wasn't just a headline or a punchline. He was a person coping with pain in the only way he thought he could. Whether Tammy played a role remains debated, but one truth stands. This was more than a bizarre death. It was a deeply human tragedy born of secrecy, desperation, and a decision that cost everything. It was the evening of December 27th, 2024, in Marianui, a quiet suburb in Napier, New Zealand. Rifa Carter was just 33 years old, a father of 3, humble, the kind of man who'd dive for seafood just to share it with others. He played rugby for the Eskview Rugby Football Club, fast on the field and full of laughter off it. To his partner Holly Tanau, he was more than a father to their 3 kids, Amaya, Mitara, and Ayotarangi. He was her best friend, her rock. That night, Rifa came across a mattress. No one knows exactly where it came from. Maybe he found it. Maybe someone offered it. What's clear is that he wanted to take it home. It was just over a kilometer away. A short ride, a simple plan, but there were no straps, no ropes, no safe way to secure it. So Rifa did what many wouldn't even consider. He lay on top of the mattress, on the roof of a black station wagon, using his own body to weigh it down. Behind the wheel was his cousin, 23-year-old Trinity Brown. She had been drinking earlier that evening, and yet, when he asked, she agreed to drive. The car started down Kennedy Road. It was late, just after 9 p.m. The roads weren't crowded. They didn't have far to go, but as they picked up speed, the wind pushed against the mattress. Rifa held on. There were no seat belts, no second chances. Onlookers saw the surreal sight, a man lying on top of a moving car, and before they could fully process it, disaster struck. The call came in. A man had fallen onto the pavement on Newfield Avenue. Emergency services arrived quickly, but it was too late. Rifa was already gone. His injuries were catastrophic. Police confirmed that no other vehicles were involved. Just one fall, one brutal impact, one irreversible moment. 2 days later, his name was released to the public, Rifa Carter, and suddenly the headlines weren't about a bizarre accident. They were about a man whose absence left a hole in a family, in a team, in an entire community. Tributes poured in. Holly posted through tears, remembering the love of her life, the father of her children. His sister Robin spoke of his patience, his kindness. His rugby club shared memories of a teammate whose laughter had once filled locker rooms. Then came the arrest. On December 30th, Trinity Brown was taken into custody. Police charged her with reckless driving causing death and with driving over the legal alcohol limit. A cousin, a friend, now burdened with the weight of taking a life she never meant to. In court, 2 months later, Trinity admitted everything. Judge Russell Collins didn't need to be told how much it hurt. He saw it in her eyes. He saw it in the silence of the courtroom. He called it what it was, a tragedy that didn't need to happen. Instead of prison, the judge sentenced her to 12 months of home detention, 2 years off the road, mandatory counseling, no alcohol, no drugs, and a clear message. The only way to honor Rifa's life now was to live hers with meaning, to make sure nothing like this ever happened again. Rifa's death wasn't the result of cruelty. It wasn't violence. It was one bad decision, a reckless, spontaneous act that lasted only minutes, but left scars that may never fade. In Maranui, his memory lingers in the rugby field cheers, in the laughter of his children, in the quiet heartbreak of a partner who still waits for the sound of his voice. A give a little page was set up for his family. Strangers and friends alike gave what they could, hoping to ease a pain that money could never touch. Police closed the case with a haunting conclusion. No foul play, no outside interference, just one risky choice that changed everything, in seconds.
Good evening. A young man has fallen to his death in a tragic accident at a sinkhole in Mount Gambier. Police say Bradley Streeter was with friends when he fell from a platform above the popular tourist attraction.
It was just past midnight on February 8, 2020, in Mount Gambier, South Australia. The night was calm, the air warm with the quiet hum of a town not yet asleep. At the heart of the city sat the Cave Garden Sinkhole, a place of ancient beauty where nature meets shadow. Tourists and locals alike are drawn to its mysterious depths, to the light shows that dance across its walls, to the vines that cling to the sheer rock face, whispering stories older than memory. That night, 20-year-old Bradley Streeter stood at the edge of it all. Bradley wasn't just another face in the crowd. He was energy in motion, loud, funny, full of spark, a Luan native who loved the outdoors, off-roading and pulling apart engines like puzzles waiting to be solved. He had already torn through 10 motorbikes and had big plans to become a mechanic. To his mother, Marianne, he wasn't just a son. He was her heart, her mind, her soul. His presence lit up any room, and even those who met him once seemed to remember him. But something shifted that night. One moment of impulse, one rush of adrenaline. Bradley and his friends had made their way to the lower viewing platform at the sinkhole, minus 98 feet above the stone floor below. The spot had seen countless visitors. Thousands had stood there safely, watching the world disappear beneath them. But that barrier, meant to protect, wasn't enough to stop curiosity or risk. At some point, Bradley climbed onto the rail. It was narrow, slick with night moisture, and nearly 100 feet off the ground. But Bradley was adventurous, fearless, maybe too fearless. In front of his friends, he attempted a handstand, upside down, balanced only by instinct and youth. Then he slipped. The fall was instant, silent, terrifying. His friends screamed. Emergency services were called immediately. Inspector Campbell Hill was one of the first to be notified. A fall into the cave garden, a vertical drop. He knew what that meant. It would take the rope rescue unit. Fire crews, police, and the state emergency service rushed to the scene. They worked in the dark, rappelling down jagged volcanic rock to recover a young man who only moments before had been laughing with friends. By 3 a.m. it was over. Bradley had been pronounced dead. Station Officer Rob Baker later spoke of the recovery. It wasn't easy. It never is. But it matters. Bringing someone home matters. Emotional support was provided to the team, because even professionals can break when the weight of a life lost is too heavy to carry. No foul play, no violence, just a split-second choice on a steel rail high above stone. A decision that from the ground might have seemed harmless, but at that height, it was unforgiving. News spread fast. Friends flooded social media with tributes. "I'll love you forever. You were the best mate. Too many memories to count, and one that hit like a punch to the chest. Fly high with your dad," because this wasn't Bradley's family's first heartbreak. His father had died just 2 years earlier. Now Marianne had lost them both. The community rallied. A fundraiser helped cover the funeral expenses. The mayor expressed sorrow and said the city might reassess the site's safety, though the platform had always met standards. But as Inspector Hill later said, there was no way to plan for this kind of moment. No railing tall enough to stop a decision made in a heartbeat. Today the cave garden remains what it has always been. Quiet, majestic, cloaked in shadows and light. Tourists still visit. Locals still walk the paths. But for those who knew Bradley Streeter, it is no longer just a scenic landmark. It was the early morning of February 15th, 2014, in Little Rock, Arkansas. Inside a white Hyundai Sonata, 7 teenagers were wide awake, laughing, whispering, hearts pounding with excitement. Among them was 15-year-old Adrienne Broadway, a high school student with a radiant smile and a love for goofing off with friends. That night, it was just another round in an ongoing prank war. Nothing serious, nothing dangerous. At least that's what they believed. Months earlier, on Halloween, a boy Adrienne and her friends knew had pranked them. Now it was their turn. They came prepared. Eggs, mayonnaise, leaves, toilet paper. It was silly. It was petty. It was teenage life. Around 1 a.m., they rolled up to the boy's house, more specifically, the home of his father, Willie Noble. They giggled as they smeared the mess over a car parked in the driveway. They had no idea it belonged to Willie, no idea what kind of man he was, and certainly no idea what he would do next, because instead of laughing it off, instead of calling the police, instead of talking to his son, Willie Noble went inside, got his gun, and waited. Roughly 45 minutes later, the teens drove by the house again, not to prank, not to start anything. Just driving by, maybe curious, maybe careless, maybe just circling back on the joke. Whatever the reason, they didn't even stop. But this time, Willie Noble was waiting. Without a word, he stepped out of his house, raised his handgun, and opened fire. Bullets ripped through the cold night air. The window of the Sonata shattered as glass exploded inward. Screams, chaos. One bullet struck the driver, 18-year-old Deason Nelson, in the hand, but the worst hit Adrienne Broadway in the head. Nelson, bleeding and panicked, somehow managed to keep control of the car. He drove them to the first place he could think of, a gas station, a harsh, fluorescent oasis in the dark. There, with his friends covered in blood and confusion, they called 911. Paramedics rushed Adrienne to Arkansas Children's Hospital, but the damage was already done. She never woke up. The news shattered Little Rock. Adrienne wasn't a troublemaker. She wasn't a criminal. She was 15, smart, funny, always laughing. Her friends said she lit up every room. That night, a candlelight vigil was held. Faces lit by soft flickers, eyes red, hearts broken. Princess Pearson, one of Adrienne's closest friends, said she was always smiling, always laughing. We were always just playing around, being goofy. Another friend, Legia Bland, spoke through tears. They were trying to be teenagers. Teenagers make mistakes. This was one of those mistakes. But mistakes aren't supposed to cost lives, and pranks aren't supposed to be answered with bullets. Social media erupted. Shock, anger, grief, not just from those who knew her, but from people across the state. Across the country, Adrienne's name was everywhere, not because she asked for it, but because she was gone. Willie Noble was arrested that same day. He claimed he didn't mean to hurt anyone, that he only wanted to scare the teens. But the bullet holes in the car told a different story. He had aimed, he had fired, and Adrienne had died. The charges were severe. One count tied directly to Adrienne's death, others for endangering the teens and using a firearm. His bond, $1 million. He sat in jail while a city mourned. In court, his defense argued fear. They pointed to Arkansas's stand-your-ground laws, claiming Noble had a right to protect his property, but the teens were driving away. The prank was over, the danger was gone, yet the bullets came anyway. The jury didn't waver. They found him guilty on all counts, 30 years in prison. That was the price for turning a childish prank into a fatal act. Noble appealed. His lawyers tried to poke holes in the charges, arguing legal technicalities. But in April 2017, the Arkansas Supreme Court upheld the conviction. Only one justice dissented, saying the law may have been misapplied. But for Adrienne's family, there was no loophole to undo the truth. Adrienne wasn't planning a crime. She wasn't armed. She wasn't a threat. She was a teenager out with friends doing something dumb and silly and harmless, the kind of thing thousands of kids do every year, the kind of night they were supposed to look back on and laugh about years later. But instead, her story ends in a hospital room, her laughter silenced, her future stolen, and the city of Little Rock, once quiet, now carries an echo, a heavy silence where a young girl's voice used to be. A reminder that in one reckless moment, fear turned into violence, and a child's mistake became a family's lifelong heartbreak.